Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation. Today we're going to talk to you about energy. Let's get into it.
We want to create a certain type of person through our energy structures. We want a person who is knowledgeable of both their energy usage and its impact on the environment, not self-focused and able to see the larger, bigger picture, self-aware and has the ability to move slower, use less, and not be focused solely on consumption, and involved. Simply put, if they are connected to the system, they will embrace it more. Our system will incentivize people to understand solar, be connected to their personal impact, be aware of how much energy they are consuming, and see where their energy comes from. This will allow for people to consume less, stay informed, and respect nature not only because they are surrounded by it, but because their energy source is connected to nature itself. Our energy system is ethically justified by the land ethic. While solar production undoubtedly requires resources from the Earth, it is one of, if not the least destructive to the planet. It takes the planet into consideration. Ecofeminism. Fossil fuels are inherently dominating. Workers are exposed to harmful chemicals, pollutants. These impact everyone, but especially impoverished and colored communities. In our system, energy is less polluting and democratized. Everyone has access to energy and understands how it is produced. This allows for them to have a voice in it. They are part of the system, not dominated. Utilitarianism. Fossil fuels have huge amounts of pain and suffering associated with them. For instance, a Harvard study on fossil fuel pollution found that the use of fossil fuels was responsible for 1 in 5 premature deaths around the world. Solar and renewables fix this problem. They allow for the pleasure of energy with minimal suffering and pain. Neo-Marxist. Our structures build us. A fossil fuel-led system is one of exploitation, suffering, death, and pollution. This undoubtedly helps create a person who is either numb to the suffering fossil fuels are causing people and the planet, or who is perhaps more open to exploiting others themselves. Renewables are a structural solution. They construct a person that has learned to live within nature, who respects it for its gift, energy. Kantian ethics. Renewables do not violate any part of the categorical imperative.
Before diving into energy, let's look at how much energy we actually need. The population agreed upon by groups is 45,302. However, as the economics group pointed out, it is estimated that the future population will actually be around 77,167. We use this number to calculate how much energy we need to produce. Starting off, the average Dallas home uses 937 kilowatt hours a month, or 11,244 kilowatt hours a year. The average Texas home has around 2.85 people. We round that to 3 because we'll have people living in apartments, more people will need to live in the same room, so we round it up to 3. Now, 77,167 people divided by 3 per room, per apartment, or per house equals 25,722, or round that up to 723. Now, taking that number, 25,723 homes times 11,244 kilowatt hours a year gives us a whopping 289,229,412 kilowatt hours needed per year to power Dallas. It's important to note that in the future, with community housing, there may be more of an opportunity to save energy. However, as everything's becoming energized, as the transportation group pointed out, more energy will be needed for other electrically powered items, and for this reason we keep our estimate high. Again, this may seem like a lot of energy, but remember, it can be accomplished. Alright, now that we know how much energy we need, let's look at how much energy solar can give us. We calculate this exact amount using a program called Solar Pathfinder. It's a professional program equipped to find solar output and efficiency. Quick shout out to Dr. Derek Straub, because he allowed us to use the program, helped us with calculations, really made this whole thing possible. Now this program is perfect because it accounts for real-time losses. We calculate that wiring connections, class discoloration over time, and dirty panels amounts to around an 11.4% total loss. When it comes to inverters, so converting energy from DC to AC that solar panels are producing, we assume that there is an estimated 12.4% loss. Now let's apply this to the real world. Alright, so now let's apply everything. Taking the Solar Pathfinder program, in order to make calculations that are easier to understand and that just hit closer to home, we decided to use the exact same panels that Susquehanna uses. So, we are using 325 watt Heliene panels. The panels are 77 inches or 6.42 feet, and that's their length, and the width is 39.1 inches or 3.26 feet. We also use the same power company, Chint Power Systems America. And if you look to your right, when it comes to shading, we estimate, just to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, that we would put these panels in areas that are mostly covered by sun. So we estimate that there will be very limited shading. Also, in the future, we'll explain that certain types of solar panels can actually follow the sun to kind of eliminate some shading, so we choose to use those solar panels. But just remember, for these purposes, we are assuming that for the most part, we do have limited shading. Okay, so looking into Dallas, we know that Susquehanna University has 12,204 solar panels. Using the same panels and the same amount of panels, so 12,204, we want to know, using Solar Pathfinder, how much power that would produce in Dallas. Well, using that program, you can select different types of solar. Starting off, there's tilted solar, and these are solar panels that are tilted perfectly for the area. So, using the program, we calculate that Dallas, the perfect or optimal tilt, would be 32.8 degrees, and the azimuth, or the direction it was facing, would be south facing. If we were to do this, using all of our calculations with 12,204 panels, we would produce right around 6 million kilowatt hours of power. Okay, so now looking at the tops of buildings, obviously you wouldn't put tilted solar on roofs, you would put flat solar panels. So solar panels that would fit on a flat roof and you'd cover the roof with them. Well, because they're not tilted at that perfect angle, they're not going to be as efficient. So 12,204 flat solar panels in Dallas on a roof would give us around 5.3 million, kilowatt hours of energy. Besides solar panels solely going on roofs, you could also put solar on the sides of buildings. So these would be like 90-degree solar, and so 12,204 building solar in Dallas would give around 3.5 million kilowatt hours of energy. Okay, so as I kind of hinted at earlier, the most efficient type of solar are two-axis solar panels, and these are panels that actually follow the sun. So they can move to follow the sun, so they're always getting the maximum amount of power that they can. Now these are more expensive, but they're definitely more efficient. So by following the sun, these panels, so 12,204 of these panels, could produce 8.2 million kilowatt hours of power. Now that we're all caught up to speed on solar, let's look at how this actually works in Dallas. So, solar implemented. The transportation group offered the image to the right to our group. This image shows around 40 miles of railroad. This is perfect for solar. By lining each side of the railroads with solar, we are leaving places open while utilizing often overlooked available space. In other words, by choosing to put solar alongside roads and railways, we allow space for greening areas, for walking, for the relocalization of animals via sanctuaries, and, as the economics group mentioned, for food vendors and for future projects and green spaces that can occur. But getting back to solar panels themselves, we plan to place 6 rows of solar on each side of the rail lines. This works because, in conjunction with the economics group, we plan to have railroad workers be trained on solar. This way, if anything goes wrong, they can fix it. However, it doesn't end there. We also plan to offer credit to any citizen that passes and maintains a solar test or certification. That way, there will be an incentive for the common individual to understand solar. Moreover, while we understand it may be hard to monitor 40 miles of solar as opposed to just one big put-together solar farm, we have a solution: the people. In addition to workers, we plan to schedule an event twice a year in which local community members, who have their solar training certificates, join workers to spread out and actually check on and monitor the solar panels. So again, even though it's stretched out over 40 miles, railroad workers will be able to address any problems they see, and we'll address that more in future slides, but there will also be events throughout the year where people check on their solar. So as mentioned, we plan to put solar along this image, this 40 miles of rail. Now, we plan to put 6 panels on each side. Well, getting to the math, 40 miles of road is roughly around 211,200 feet. Assuming we leave 1 foot in between panels and 3 feet in between the rows of solar, that would mean that we would have to take our 211,000 feet and divide it by 3.5 width of each panel plus a foot of space in between the panels, and we would get 49,694 panels in each row. So each 40-mile stretch of panels would contain 49,000 panels. Now that's over 4 SU solar arrays. Now, we plan to use 2-axis solar, and remember that 12,204 panels with 2-axis tilt produces around 8 million kilowatt hours of energy. So, just divide the two, and you would get that roughly one solar axis panel, 2-axis panel, in Dallas, Texas, produces 674.38 kilowatt hours per panel. Now, we simply take that number, and we multiply it by 49,694 panels in each row, but we times that number by 12 because remember there's 6 rows on each side. Well, that produces a whopping 386 million kilowatt hours of energy. Now remember, we only needed 289 million, so we're already over. This means we are prepared for even more people that can come as we make communities bigger and more together in areas, but we can also sell any extra energy to outside areas so they have green energy, and we have more energy for any future projects, for charging vehicles, and for any other thing that would need power. So we're very prepared with this amount of solar. Now that we know how much energy this solar can produce, we should really go back and talk about how we plan to maintain this. After all, by having a stretched out 40 miles of solar panels, we'll have to have a way to pinpoint when certain solar panels along that 40-mile stretch aren't working. We believe we have a solution. So, as we previously mentioned, we are offering yearly credits for those who achieve and maintain solar certifications. This assures us that many people will have a solid understanding of solar. However, we also want to offer government discounts for people who conserve and use less energy. This will create a type of person who is aware of their energy and who will be equipped to monitor their energy and to be able to tell if anything goes wrong. This monitoring can be done in 2 ways. First, we want every home to have an energy uses monitor. This allows for each person to see how much energy they are using. If anything is going wrong, the solar is not functioning properly, they can be notified by the monitor, which can be accompanied by an app on their phone. This allows them to be able to pinpoint that their energy isn't working, and they can alert a worker, and that issue can be resolved. We also want to have solar meters. These, and I quote, are responsible for logging your PV system's energy generation in real time. So, if one person is looking at this and they realize that their output is low, that would indicate that there would be a problem. And because citizens in this system are very much equipped to understand and be connected to their solar, they'll be able to pinpoint these problems themselves, and because they're educated, these problems can be addressed along the rail stretch. So we believe our solutions to these problems are perfect for this system. Now we look at ways we can reduce our energy consumption.
So for ways to reduce our energy consumption, we looked at green buildings. Green buildings include design elements that reduce the need for certain energy expenditures, such as AC, heat, and other things like that. They often include white rooftops, plants on balconies, home wind turbines, or solar windows. Can also be commercial buildings with solar or plants. We looked at integrated energy sources, such as the Pavagen tiles, which I'll talk about in a few slides. Pavagen tiles connect people and generate electricity without requiring any extra work. We also looked at grass roofs, which are widely used in Scandinavian countries. They insulate, absorb sun, and create green space, and can sometimes be used for food, such as gardens or grazing for animals. The village homes concept that Dr. Martin talked about is the idea that neighbors become connected to help the elderly live independently, so they don't have to worry about being alone. This connects people without requiring apartment complexes and big urban spaces, and can utilize more efficient housing. It can remove or reduce the need for assisted living buildings, further create a sense of community that makes people feel more connected, and allow for shared energy sources. These energy sources can, of course, be sustainable ones, such as solar or wind, and the village homes concept could also reduce the size of buildings and allow for more green space or integration of nature into people's lives. So for green buildings, like I said, they're designed to be less harmful for the environment, and they maximize the natural energy sources that we can get from the environment. Buildings with better insulation, more windows, grass roofs, integrated solar panels, wind turbines, etc. all count as green buildings. And oftentimes they have plants on the balconies or roofs in order to help offset carbon emissions. There are many different ways to create green buildings. They can be used for offices, shopping centers, housing, and more. As far as the green roofs and grass roofs are a smart idea, but they are not always the most practical. They require a lot more water and sunlight, and in our scenarios, the roof space is probably more valuable for solar panels and farming, but grass roofs might be more practical, such as for areas such as residential, or for buildings that aren't skyscrapers or 5+ stories high, just because they do require some maintenance. So in our specific case, Dallas is home to many high-rise apartment buildings, the Baylor Medical Center, and other buildings that would be perfect to convert to green buildings. Planting native species of plants, shrubs, and small trees on balconies and in window boxes would be a great solution to conserving energy, reducing the environmental impacts of existing emissions, and connecting individuals with the environment on a deeper level. The economy group discussed plants in buildings such as apartments, but this goes one step further and introduces plants on the outside of other types of buildings. This ensures green space even in a busy city and benefits the environment. So the two cases I have here are the Baylor University Medical Center, and planting in these windows or on the roof would improve environmental conditions and most likely benefit the patients of the hospital, as it would connect them with nature while they are healing. And if we are implementing apothecaries like the economics group mentioned, certain medicinal plants could be grown here as well, making it easier for people to access them. I also talk about the Cotton Bowl Stadium, which could be converted to a much greener structure by adding plants and trees around the windows and different stadium levels. If we were to convert the field itself to real grass instead of turf, that would also create added green space and could help with the sustainability of the structure itself, as well as connecting people to nature. And any building that doesn't have solar on its roof or plants along the sides, anything like this, would basically just require the roof to be painted white, and then it would already be off to a more sustainable and energy conserving start. White roofs are another way of reducing energy consumption. In most urban areas, the roofing is black. When the sun shines on these black surfaces, they absorb heat, heating up the buildings themselves. And in urban areas, when everything else is black, such as the roads, sidewalks, parking lots, bridges, and garage, all of these black surfaces start to absorb and trap heat, which causes the temperature in cities to rise dramatically. Urban areas tend to be 15 to 20 degrees hotter than their suburban neighbors, and this rise in temperature has lasting consequences, such as stress on the power grid, increased pollution, and a greater risk of breathing problems. So using white roofs will reduce energy costs for air conditioning, something very important in a place like Dallas. It will also reduce the impacts of climate change, as the sun will no longer be absorbed by a sea of dark or black surfaces. The city as a whole will stay cooler, and less energy will be needed to run AC and other cooling methods. This will allow us to focus solar and other renewables towards necessary energy sinks. The final way I looked at making green buildings was by utilizing grass roofs. Grass roofs are widely utilized in Scandinavian countries and can provide a place for people to meet up, animals to graze if applicable, and added garden space. Grass roofs insulate homes in the winter and keep them cool in the summer, and they are waterproof. When they are properly maintained and installed, they can even strengthen the structure of homes. Although historical grass roofs used birch bark to make sure the interior of the house was dry, the modern grass roofs used now utilize bitumen felt instead of the birch bark. In Dallas, we could cover this area to the right with grass and sod roofs, as it has many lower buildings and less of the high-rise apartments. Implementing grass roofs here would reduce the energy needed for AC and heat and could help bring local flora and fauna back into the area.
And moving on from conserving energy, we take a look at another way that we can produce it.
So as we saw in the video, Pavilion tiles are sidewalk or floor tiles. If we were to keep malls, shopping centers, and schools in the Dallas area, we could theoretically install these panels in heavy foot traffic areas. They can also be used in transportation areas, such as bus and train stops. And according to the Pavilion website, around 250,000 steps is enough charge for 10,000 phones. It's new technology, and it does not seem to be feasible for high energy use, but we could theoretically use it for smaller things, such as charging devices, powering LED lights, etc. And then we can save the solar and other renewable resources for bigger energy consumptions. Pavilion tiles would be especially helpful for our superblock, as there would be no car traffic and people would be spending more time walking around. You might as well create energy while you're going about your day-to-day life. People can connect to the tiles via their phones, which is a connection to the energy you're producing. And although this is a new technology, it would be a great asset to reinventing Dallas as a green city.
Now moving away from green buildings and Pavilion tiles, we can look at how energy and food buildings are connected. We could use parking lots and repurpose them to insect farms. There are many benefits to farming insects, especially if they are to replace other forms of meat such as cattle. Insects require less land and resources. Raising livestock takes up to 70% of total land use. Land grazing causes ecosystem destruction, displacing both wildlife and humans. Insects require far less space than the animals currently being farmed, such as pigs, cattle, sheep, and chickens. They also generate less waste and consume less resources per capita than mammals and birds. Insects offer better nutrient efficiency. There are similar amounts of protein in 100 grams of crickets and 100 grams of beef. Crickets also have around 1/3 of the calories and 1/4 of the fat of beef, making them a healthier and more nutrient-dense alternative. As long as the insects are raised in optimal conditions, their fat content will be at an appropriate level. Insects also have significantly less iron than other types of meat. Since iron has been known to cause heart disease and other health problems, that's another win for insect meat. Insects only require 2 kilograms of food for 1 kilogram of product, compared to 24 kilograms of food for 1 kilogram of cattle meat. Insects cause less greenhouse gas emissions. Raising livestock generates 18% of all greenhouse gases, mostly methane and ammonia byproducts. Insects, however, produce negligible amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. Termites are the only known species to create methane, and no known insect species produces ammonia. Insects grow and reproduce faster. Larger and more complex animals tend to have longer lives and breeding periods. Insects, given their size, are quick to mature. Crickets reach full maturity in less than a month, with a single female laying more than 1,000 eggs in that time. Cattle, by comparison, require 4 breeding animals for every one that is produced. As I mentioned before, cattle need 12 times as much food as crickets. One of the primary factors in this is the fact that crickets are able to collect heat from their external environment, which mammals are unable to do. Insects carry less disease risk. We have frequently witnessed outbreaks of foodborne illnesses that require large quantities of recalls of meat, such as beef, pork, and chicken. Insects can't carry these diseases, such as Salmonella, H1N1, and mad cow disease. Because insects are so genetically different to humans compared to their fellow mammals, the risk of transmitting such diseases is very low. Insects can increase food security. Insects are a versatile food source, including nutrients such as carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. Especially in underdeveloped nations, where climate change, food insecurity, economic struggles, and lack of land are problems that create feedback loops, farming insects can adequately feed the entire population while keeping the environment intact. Meat is becoming more expensive, and when this combines with increasing populations, it makes things that much harder for people to feed themselves. In just Thailand, 20,000 cricket farms exist, producing 7,500 tons of food every year. Farming insects can help with pests. Most pests that normally destroy other crops are insects. But if insects were farmed, they could be caught and farmed instead of being killed with pesticides. This would benefit farmers double, because they would have an increased food supply from the insects they'd normally be killing, and they wouldn't be losing crops from insect invasions and the pesticides used to kill those insects. It is estimated that removing pesticides, as well as the additional money made from increased insect sales, could save farmers thousands of dollars each year. Insects cause less water pollution. Livestock farms generate large amounts of manure, which seeps into our drinking water and causes serious health problems. When this happens in coastal regions, it forms dead zones and harms coral reefs. It is not only animal waste, but also hormones, antibiotics, and chemicals used to raise the animals that also pollute the waste. Also, livestock tend to compact the soil when they walk on it, making it not as good as filtrating the pollution. We could use insects carry less disease to insect farms.
Next we look to wind turbines.
Wind energy is wind that is captured and converted into electricity. Most wind turbines have an efficiency between 35 and 45%. Wind forms when differences in atmospheric temperatures occur. Warm air is less dense than cold air, so it rises, and cooler air from regions of higher pressure move in to take its place and equalize the air pressure. Implementing windmills would put this kinetic energy to good use, as the air that passed through was converted to electricity. The wind that comes in moves the blades, which rotate a motor that produces the electricity. According to the laws of physics, the best limit for windmill efficiency is 59.6%, meaning that 59.6% of energy is absorbed by the blades. If 100% of the energy was absorbed by the blades, the wind would stop blowing. No machine is capable of converting the entire 59.6%, however. The way the generators are made would further decrease their efficiency of converting wind to power, the current average being 35 and 45%, with 50% as the maximum. There are a few factors that influence wind capacity. Wind speed is one. According to a study done by WindWatch, if the wind is below 30 miles per hour, it won't produce much energy. However, even a small increase in wind speed can generate significantly more energy. Another factor is air density. Cooler air is heavier than warmer regions, such as near sea level and mountains. These would be the ideal places to put windmills. This is one reason why people have already implemented offshore wind generation systems. A turbine's size also plays into their effectiveness. When they are larger and taller, they can capture more of the air higher above sea level. With improved technology comes improved capacity for turbines. In 2014, turbines had a capacity of 41.2%, compared with 31.2% a decade earlier. Capacity and energy efficiency have equal importance when determining the quality of a solution. The solution must be feasible and not hassled by pollution. However, wind energy does have one drawback. It is not always available, as the wind is not blowing constantly at a uniform speed. Because of this, we will need larger energy reserves to ensure that wind power remains present during the off periods. According to the American scientist, increasing the number of windmills will aid in balancing the surpluses and shortages of wind energy. Improved weather forecasting technology has also made it easier to predict when these surpluses and shortages will occur. In 2017, The Independent revealed that wind energy production was cheaper than fossil fuel energy production. In 2017, it cost $50 per megawatt hour, and costs are predicted to continue to fall. The government plans to incentivize consumers by providing financial bonuses and subsidies. According to the Wind EIS, 80% of the cost will be upfront, and it will pay for more than itself. It is predicted that in 2050, the 139 countries who use 99% of the planet's energy could operate entirely on renewable sources, 97% of which will be made up of wind and solar. This will also help prevent the global temperature from rising the catastrophic 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Now, Connor takes a look at wind turbines in Dallas.
So first, some general facts about wind energy. So wind turbines produce zero emissions and is one of the cleanest forms of energy This is especially true when comparing it to drilling for fossil fuels and other harmful energy techniques. Larger residential wind turbines could potentially get most, if not all, of their energy from wind for a single household. However, these would be massive towers, 80 to 100 feet tall, and most people wouldn't be able to afford that, and they would take up a lot of room. However, smaller residential wind turbines may also work as a supplementary power source, and this is what we would basically want to actually incorporate. We would connect it to the grid, and this would lower the dependence on the rest of the power grid and reduce energy consumption. So like our main source obviously is going to be coming from solar panels, but if we could have these small supplementary wind turbines on each household, that would greatly reduce the total amount of energy that the solar panels need to consume. Small wind electric systems can lower electricity bills by 50% to 90%. That's just what it is right now currently, not in Dallas. People with residential turbines will need to be able to do maintenance, such as checking bolts and electrical connections or replacing turbine blades. So this would connect people to their source of energy, making them realize how it actually works. Instead of just being blind about it, they would actually have to figure out how they work so they can fix them. So next I'm going to talk about wind turbines specifically in Dallas. So Texas already gets about 20% of their energy from wind energy. This makes them one of the highest percentages in the entire United States. That means that the transition to using wind energy with turbines in Dallas wouldn't be as drastic as it would be in other parts of the country. They're already used to getting their energy from large turbine farms. We would be making it slightly different by having people have their own turbines and then incorporating them throughout the environment, basically. A typical home in Dallas uses approximately 937 kilowatt hours per month, or 11,255 kilowatt hours per year, which would mean a single wind turbine would need to be in the range of 5 to 15 kilowatts to make up for that. And that's just using wind turbines completely, not involving solar panels. In our renovated Dallas, we would add small wind turbines to residential buildings, as well as roofs of buildings downtown and sides of interstates, such as I-30. So yeah, basically anywhere they could fit that isn't harming the environment too much. Obviously, one of the big cons to wind turbines is that birds and other flying animals don't see the turbines and they go into them and they die, unfortunately. And this is just one of the small cons. Obviously, it affects the environment slightly, but not as much as, say, drilling for oil and all that stuff does, which is even greater than that. And then the average wind speed in Dallas during the windiest time of the year is 10.5 miles per hour. That's more than enough wind, especially for that time of the year, to help produce a significant amount of energy for a single household. So next I'm going to talk about pricing residential turbines. So obviously someone's going to have to pay for the turbines. So either people could just pay, say, a company to install them, or they could pay like the government taxes, say, especially for like the ones on the side of interstates. Obviously, people are going to have to pay some form of tax or just be billed for that. So the government can pay people to obviously install them and like keep them up and running. So for home turbines, a marine grade wind turbine can produce up to 400 watts of power. I looked it up and they cost about $400, and they can run small TVs, phones, lights, radios, and power tools. So these are the ones I was talking about that could work supplementary to the power grid with the solar panels. So basically, our person, we already talked about, is going to try to use less electricity in general. This means only having, say, one TV in a household, not having the lights on all the time. So if they only have one TV and that TV is ran from a wind turbine, and everybody does that, that's going to greatly reduce the energy needed from the main power grid from the solar panels. And then a 24-volt DC turbine can produce about 40 kilowatts per month at 5.8 meters per second wind. So those are going to cost $1,000, $2,000, and these are the ones I'm talking about that might be able to be on the sides of the interstates and on buildings that the government can run. And so those would just be supplementary also to the main power grid. They won't necessarily need to take up all the energy needed. They'll just be kind of supplementary to the solar panels. And while there's a slight upfront cost to having a residential wind turbine, the benefit would outweigh it because of the reduced electric bill, and our person will realize the benefit of a zero emission energy source. Our person would need to understand how wind turbines work. I already talked about this. They need to potentially repair them, say if there's bad weather outside and they would break, they'd need to understand how to fix their own wind turbine so they could have that energy. This will connect them to their energy source and make them understand how it actually works. Wind turbines would also add jobs to Dallas. Obviously, you need wind turbine repair people. It could be like a government job, as well as personally owned companies that could come and sell and install the turbines for you, which would be a good local business. So now I'm going to talk about the ethics of wind turbines from a utilitarianism point of view. Switching to wind turbines instead of drilling for fossil fuels would be beneficial to not only more people, but more living things on Earth in general, as it is a zero-emission source of energy that will help prevent global warming. It also has a greatly smaller impact to its environment than drilling for fossil fuels. This makes wind energy ethically better because it's helping a larger amount of people with not as much pain. From a land ethic point of view, wind turbines take up small amount of space. If they're placed on the land, say if they're placed on a building, they don't take up any land at all. This means the wind turbines don't harm the earth and soil, much like many other forms of energy do, say drilling for fossil fuels, which is very destructive to the soil. And then from a Marxist spatial analysis, residential wind turbines only take up a small amount of space, like I just said, so they won't be taking away a lot from nature. Larger wind turbines take up much less space than large fossil fuel facilities, and especially at the ground level where most nature won't be affected at all on a wind turbine. So obviously higher up where the actual turbine's spinning around, yes, there's the potential for birds to fly into it, but at the ground level, there's not a lot going on down there, with the wind turbine, so there still can be living life down there, and animals can be down there. Wind turbines, both residential and larger, will be seen by everyone, so they'll be able to see their actual where they're getting their energy from, and it's not just hidden away in some factory or something. And this will allow them to realize the importance of their wind turbines for their energy as they see them in their everyday life.
The next part of our plan for implementing cleaner and more energy efficient technology is the installation of solar panels on the roofs of commercial or industrial buildings. Commercial solar panels use what is called distributed generation, which means that the energy that's produced is utilized at or near where it was generated. It is a more centralized method of energy generation. Installing solar panels would involve large racking systems to allow the panels to tilt with the movement of the sun throughout the day. Utilizing this method to follow the sun throughout the day would ensure that we get the most amount of solar energy that we can possibly get. All commercial solar panels have 96 cells or greater in order to be able to match the energy demand of such a large building. A commercial business utilizing solar panels has been shown to reduce their electricity bill costs, and it will make businesses eligible for tax credits or deductions as part of our previously stated plan to offer credits to those who maintain solar certifications and use less energy overall. Another idea we have for implementing solar energy is the use of solar windows. Solar windows are essentially solar panels that people can still see through. They would be put on the sides of the Baylor Medical Center, replacing their current windows. Some benefits of installing solar windows would be that they would allow both residential and commercial buildings to produce more solar power while keeping rooftops and other flat surfaces open for other environmental uses and processes. Solar windows could also be combined with other green building ideas within one building in order to offset some of the energy expenditures. Putting solar windows on the sides of the Baylor Medical Center would generate a significant amount of solar energy as the building is 353,101 square feet. There are some issues with solar windows as well, however. Solar windows are costly and therefore not widely utilized. This makes the availability of solar window materials low. Many companies, even if they have been working with solar windows, have not made them commercially available yet. The company Energy Glass is developed and working with this idea, but they're only focusing on commercial use, which would render residential solar windows even more unlikely. The takeaway from this research on solar windows is that they are too expensive and under-researched to currently use and implement in the real world, but in our planning scenario for Dallas, they could be a feasible option, with cost being the only issue.
So, now that we've explained how we plan to produce all of this energy, we have to answer the question of how will we store all of this. After all, the main critique of renewables is that it's not always sunny and it's not always windy. Well, we plan to store all of this with a new, recyclable, environmentally conscious type of redox flow battery. Redox flow batteries can be scaled up, they last longer than standard lithium-ion batteries, they're also safer. If their materials mix, there's no fires or explosions. Lithium-ion batteries, so the ones we use today, also require harmful materials and both workers and the planet are exploited for them. However, typical redox flow batteries use vanadium, which is harmful when it's extracted to the planet and to the people. But this new redox flow battery solves all of this. It's an iron-based redox flow battery that uses different solutions with environmentally conscious materials, so no vanadium. Additionally, it is increasingly becoming more and more popular and possible. In an article describing the new batteries, authors wrote, "To date, there has been no economically viable, eco-friendly solution to energy storage that can last for 25 years. Lithium-ion batteries do not have a long life. Think of your iPhone battery, kind of like wears down over time. And vanadium-based redox flow batteries are expensive, they use toxic materials, and this limits their large-scale use. But these new batteries, they're the answer." We foresee these batteries used in residential, commercial, and industrial buildings to capture renewable energy. So I have a quick video on the next slide that really goes into detail and kind of explains how these new batteries work. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome to Just Have a Think. Redox flow batteries are a brilliant idea. They're a kind of cross between a battery and a fuel cell, and they're very easily scalable. The basic setup is 2 tanks of electrolyte liquid containing solutions of vanadium. The vanadium ions in each tank have different chemical configurations, so that one tank acts as a positive electrolyte and the other tank acts as a negative electrolyte. In between them, there's a cell stack. The solutions from each tank are pumped into the cell stack where they're separated by a thin membrane. As the system discharges, the ions in the negatively charged solution release an electron in a process the science bods call oxidation. Those electrons move towards an electrode in the cell stack and go out through a circuit to do their useful electrical work before returning to another electrode on the other side of the stack. That electrode feeds the electrons into the positively charged solution, which is happy to receive them. The process on that side is known as reduction. You can see where I'm going here, can't you? Yes, you guessed it. The reduction and oxidation processes are what gives redox flow batteries their name. Redox flow batteries have a lower energy density, but they can be really easily scaled up to theoretically unlimited energy capacity simply by using larger electrolyte storage tanks. They can also be left charged or completely discharged for very long periods without degrading. They're a lot safer than lithium-ion batteries too. If the electrolytes in a flow battery accidentally get mixed, there's no fire or explosion and the battery doesn't get damaged. They can be discharged down to about 90% or more, and they can be cycled between 15 and 20,000 times, which is way better than the 4,000 to 5,000 cycles of lithium-ion. All of that makes them cheap, and cheap is something that grid operators are quite keen on. But that problem of vanadium electrolytes and polyacrylonitrile electrodes is definitely a wrinkle that developers would very much like to iron out as these things get more and more integrated into large-scale grids, not just to drive costs down still further, but also to avoid the environmental impact of drilling and mining for those materials. Most recently, in April 2020, from a team of scientists at the University of South California, who published a paper in the Journal of the Electrochemical Society demonstrating a flow battery using an electrolyte solution combining iron sulfate, which is a cheap and plentiful waste product of the mining industry, with something called anthraquinone disulfonic acid, or AQDS, based on quinone, which is an organic material that the team reckon can be derived from any carbon-based feedstock, including carbon dioxide. They claim the material costs for their battery will be about $66 per kilowatt hour, which is less than half the cost of the vanadium version. That research already represents a big step forward for flow battery technology, providing an important boost to get this method of energy storage adopted on a much wider commercial scale. But this latest research from the team at Linköping University over in Sweden has taken the concept a couple of very important steps further, not least from an environmental point of view. If you watched our video about energy storage in bricks from a couple of weeks ago, you may remember me talking about a conducting organic polymer called PEDOT. Well, it turns out that PEDOT is proving a popular choice because that's precisely what the Swedish team have used to coat the carbon electrodes in their flow battery system. They used chemical doping to manipulate the PEDOT into a state that will transport either positive ions or negative ions, so you can effectively have a cathode and an anode, like a normal battery, with both made from the same material. And just like the USC team, they've also used quinone molecules to form the basis of their electrolyte solution. It's called ARS, which their research paper refers to as a sulfonated anthraquinone derivative that becomes anionic in aqueous solution. That gives it the important distinction of being water-based and not acid-based. Their principal research engineer, Mikhail Vagin, says quinones can be derived from wood, but here we've used the same molecule together with different variants of the conducting polymer PEDOT. It turns out that they are highly compatible with each other, which is like a gift from the natural world. The Swedish battery is also totally recyclable and completely safe in operation.
So now that you've heard how we plan to produce energy, why it's ethical, and how we plan on storing it, let's talk about this idea of democratizing energy. And does our system actually do this? Well, democratizing energy means that everyone has access to it, and that energy isn't harming people in the process. However, not everyone can put solar on their roof. Some, like in the video I'm about to show you, propose community solar as a solution, in which communities buy up land for solar. Our solution is similar to this, but we take it a step further. In our system, we use the road and train tracks as a key area for solar. By lining the tracks, we left room for other things that didn't take up huge areas of land, or buy out people's homes and make them move so we could build specific solar farms. Instead, we put enough solar panels to power essentially everything with 100% solar, but we also have wind and solar on buildings and tiles for even more power. We also offer checks for people who are trained on energy. This creates a society where everyone is aware of energy and how much they use, and the importance of it. In this society, people see where the energy comes from daily, and they play a role in the process of it by staying informed. In this way, we have democratized the energy sector. It is community involved and oriented and available to all. This is clean energy done the right way. Now, check out this video on the next slide talking about democratizing energy.
What if we democratized access to clean energy?
This is Steph Spears, a clean energy entrepreneur.
I grew up in Honolulu, went to college on the mainland, and I learned to be a community organizer. And I learned that people can come together and do incredible things that seem impossible. Like, what if we gave everyone access to solar power?
Let's talk about energy.
Energy obviously powers everything we do, and we're using more and more. When people turn on their light switch, there's a mix of sources of power that's providing the electricity. Coal, fossil fuels, hydropower, geothermal, wind, solar, nuclear, coal. Damn it, I said coal already. And for the last 100 years, we've gotten our electricity from monopoly utilities, and people don't recognize that they have a choice in choosing the source of their power. The problem is, only 20% of Americans can put solar on their own home. It's a variety of reasons why. Maybe they're a renter, the roof is facing the wrong way, maybe there's a tree covering their roof.
That means that 80% of Americans can't get solar. That leaves a lot of us out.
So there's a new type of solar out there, and it's called community solar. You don't put solar on your own home. You buy a portion of a neighborhood shared solar farm in your local community. You continue to get your utility bill. A credit shows up for the solar that's produced by your portion of the shared solar farm. And most people save about 10% off their electricity bill.
All right, and that is the end of our presentation. I hope everybody liked it. Thanks for listening, and we'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.